Released a report has found the screening tool the state uses to identify children who are victims of human trafficking is not very reliable and may not successfully identify all kids.
I mean, it's kids' lives.
The stakes are high.
Absolutely.
And our I-team has found, despite years of recommendations, the Department of Children and Families has made no changes to the interview guide since it was first implemented 7 years ago.
Tonight, I-team investigator Kylie McGivern breaks down the significance and talks with a survivor about the importance of identifying vulnerable kids to get them the help they need.
I grew up in Wisconsin. I had a great family. We went to church. I was captain of the golf team in high school, and nothing traumatic ever happened to me growing up. But there was always the feeling of I didn't fit in. I met a man on a dating app. So I was 16, he was 36. He became my trafficker, and I was in this house with him for months without leaving.
The Department of Children and Families, DCF, tries to find kids who are victims of sex trafficking, like Holly Harris, to connect them with help. To do that, they use a screening tool with 50 questions about work, relationships, tattoos or branding, history of running away, and sexual contact, wanted or unwanted. State law requires the human trafficking tool to be validated if possible. The Office of Program Policy Analysis and Government Accountability, in its annual study on commercial exploitation of children back in 2016, stated the importance of the screening tool measuring what it is intended to measure. But in its newly released annual report, the Government Accountability Office says since 2015, DCF has not made any changes to the screening tool. It was unable to validate the tool, and it may not successfully identify all youth victims of sex trafficking.
Sometimes this may be someone's only chance for identification, right?
Dr. Lisa Magruder with the Florida Institute for Child Welfare led the research on the human trafficking screening tool's effectiveness.
It's really important that we get this right if this is the first time they've been screened or potentially the only time they've been screened for this.
The stakes are high.
Absolutely. I mean, from the research, we know that there's absolutely, dire consequences for those who are victimized by human trafficking. And we want to make sure that they're connected to services and that they are receiving the help that they need.
Magruder said identification is also important to collect data on what's happening in Florida to get ahead of the problem.
While screening is incredibly important, I think the ultimate goal is to really get a hold of what's happening in our state so that we can come back on the prevention side of things and try to prevent this from happening in the first place.
After a drop in reporting during the height of the pandemic, last year, the Florida Abuse Hotline received 2,289 tips alleging human trafficking of children. Nearly 93% of those for sex trafficking, mostly girls and an increasing number of boys, with the highest number of reports coming from the central region. This includes Citrus, Hernando, and Polk counties. In its report, DCF attributed the increase to a delay in reporting during the pandemic, a new state law requiring hotel and motel employees to complete annual training on human trafficking awareness, which led to more reports, and online trainings available to more people across the state.
Maybe at some point we will be able to say, yes, this is where we need it to be. It's measuring what we said it's supposed to measure, and it looks like folks are using this pretty consistently, and we think that this is a really good indicator of whether or not a youth winds up ultimately being verified or not as a victim of human trafficking.
Because right now, in simple terms, it sounds like, all right, on the right track, not totally there yet.
I think that's definitely fair to say.
I mean, it's kids' lives. If there isn't preventative measures and people that are taking the time to research and care and put these kinds of things together, it's like, can talk about it, but if there's not an effort towards preventing it or towards change, why are you doing it?
We want to acknowledge there's an important voice missing from this story who has a responsibility to protect Florida children, the state. I reached out a month ago to talk about the human trafficking screening tool and the finding that it may not successfully identify all kids. I also asked if DCF is following all of the recommendations to improve this tool, including converting to an electronic format, and why it has not made any changes to it in more than 5 years. Despite repeated requests, we have received no answers. With photojournalist Randy Wright in Tampa, I'm I-Team investigator Kylie McGivern taking action for you.